When you place a massive structure under immense pressure, a single localized flaw rarely stays localized. It seeks the path of least resistance, fracturing outward until the entire system gives way. In pharmaceutical development, the pressure is regulatory approval. Currently, the FDA delays or rejects 40% of clinical trials, specifically because of data errors. Regulatory affairs professionals find themselves in a loop, explaining to senior management why a multi-million-dollar submission is stalled by technical formatting issues. It is a systemic breakdown in communication between the data and the regulator. Contract research organizations absorb the immediate financial impact. Major trial contracts now embed specific penalty clauses, enforcing monetary fines for every FDA query traced back to a mapping error in the data. Biostatisticians watch their credibility erode alongside the data. Statistical analysis holds zero weight if the underlying data structure mapped to the models is flawed. For small, single-asset biotech sponsors, these formatting flaws carry an existential risk. Delayed approvals mean lost market exclusivity and rapidly depleted capital. Downstream from the balance sheets, patients bear the ultimate cost. Every validation failure and every resulting FDA query adds months of wait time for people depending on therapies. Formatting trial data is often treated as a siloed IT task, but it serves as the critical, load-bearing foundation upon which the entire regulatory timeline rests. The industry operates on the assumption that compliance is a matter of checking boxes and running scripts to catch common errors. The mandatory regulatory framework for submitting this clinical data is known as SDTM, the Study Data Tabulation Model. Industry veterans with decades of programming experience argue that reducing unique, highly variable clinical trials to a rigid checklist oversimplifies the actual science. This is a direct architectural clash. The industry is attempting to force the fluid complexity of modern medicine into a rigid 20th century standard data model. As long as sponsors treat this friction as a simple coding problem rather than an architectural deficit, that 40% failure rate will persist. Major contract research organizations are currently building automated checking systems based on known FDA query points. The goal is to market FDA query-free submissions to pharmaceutical sponsors, using these checklists to secure a competitive advantage. This automated checklist approach fails because every clinical study possesses a unique structural fingerprint, shaped by its specific patient populations and endpoints. This standard SDTM domain is a rigid matrix for simple assessments. In adaptive trials, changing protocols force branching logic trees into grid spaces, fracturing the cells. In complex oncology studies, novel biomarkers introduce irregular data requirements that shatter the remaining domains. Reducing unique, dynamic study designs into static tabular formats breaks the inherent data logic. An automated checklist cannot fix a foundation that doesn't fit the building. Beyond the data structure itself, the regulatory review process introduces a highly unpredictable human element. FDA reviewers are not a monolithic entity. They do not apply tabulation rules uniformly across the agency. Two identical STDM structures travel to separate FDA review divisions. One accepts the mapping while the other rejects it. As that red rejection signal pulses backward, it overrides the automated checklist gates. The software marked success, the human marked failure. Regulatory consultants navigate this unpredictability by attempting to guess the specific preferences of individual review divisions, rather than following a strict technical manual. Because acceptance is subjective across different divisions, a checklist offers no guarantees. Submitting data becomes a system of validation roulette. Large pharmaceutical companies can afford the IT infrastructure required to endlessly revalidate these submissions. Small biotech startups simply lack that luxury. For a startup CEO, trial funding is a zero-sum game. Every dollar spent on administrative compliance is pulled from active operations. This scale illustrates the trade-off. When a startup diverts capital into pursuing perfect mapping and zero FDA queries, they drain resources from patient enrollment and real-time safety monitoring. Data science directors are concluding that the mapping process isn't the problem. The STDM model itself is the bottleneck. They argue the industry should stop patching a broken mapping system and instead fund the development of flexible data standards. At a certain threshold, the obsessive pursuit of perfect, error-free tabulation becomes actively counterproductive to delivering treatments to patients. Over the next 3 months, the FDA will hire additional data reviewers and issue updated guidance documents to increase scrutiny on incoming submissions. By month 6, major CROs will deploy automated checking software, fighting to secure a short-term competitive advantage in the market. Over the next year, CDESC will release updated implementation guides. These updates will specifically target pain points, like RELREC, or related records, enforcing stricter controlled terminology requirements to standardize how different datasets link together. These updates provide clarity, but they function as band-aids. They patch the existing system rather than resolving the core clash between static tables and dynamic science. The 24-month horizon reveals a technological shift. AI-powered SDTM mapping tools are emerging that utilize machine learning to execute data transformations without manual coding. The early adopters of these tools will see a sharp drop in FDA queries, which will eventually force an industry-wide adoption of the technology. This diagram shows the shift in data management. The industry will move away from repetitive manual programming loops and towards streamlined, automated AI transformation pipelines. Because the AI handles the repetitive syntax of the code, the human role transitions from implementation to oversight. This new role, the data architect, focuses on the high-level mapping of complex endpoints, like digital biomarkers, ensuring the automated pipeline preserves the integrity of the trial's unique science. Instead of writing line-by-line code, these architects will design the macro-level logic and manage the semantic bridges between raw data and the regulatory standard.